The chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered beneath the dome of artificial stars, every detail crafted to display the unity and power of 1,000 civilizations. But that unity was built on centuries of tension, and tonight a single empty seat whispered a silent warning. It was the seat of humanity, now vacant for the first time in living memory. Ambassador Lyris of the Sirith Collective shifted uneasily, her iridescent skin flickering in the council's cool blue light. Around her, the assembled representatives glanced at the empty chair with a mix of relief and lingering discomfort. The old Terran ambassador, Elena Wu, had been the council's most persistent voice, a mediator, a troublemaker, a challenger of injustice, and a relentless questioner. She had stood in this very room and defied empires, unmasked corruption, and demanded compassion for the weak and the forgotten. Now she and all of humanity were gone. The break had come after years of mounting frustration. The elder races, wearied by Terran resistance to their plans, had finally voted to dissolve Earth's seat. The humans, wounded and proud, left the chamber without another word. No final threats, no dramatic gestures. They simply gathered their envoys, packed up their embassies, and withdrew from every treaty, every mission, every alliance. They left as quietly as they had once arrived. For a few days the council felt lighter. Debates were shorter. New laws passed swiftly. Trade routes opened. Some ambassadors even joked that peace had finally arrived. But in the weeks that followed, an uncomfortable pattern emerged. On the border world of Viren, long protected by Terran peacekeepers, a sudden raid by the Zarnark slavers left hundreds missing. No one responded. The council's fleets were bogged down in endless protocol, and no voice demanded action. On Lotha's moon, where human engineers had maintained the hydrocores, the water supply failed, leaving millions desperate. Aid came late, wrapped in bureaucracy, and lacked the improvisational genius Terrans had always brought. Back in the council chamber, complaints mounted. Why are the neutral colonies suffering? Lyris asked at one tense meeting. Where is the old balance? Chancellor Dreven, a senior member of the Veil Dominion, scoffed. It will stabilize. The Terrans made things chaotic. We are finally restoring order. But even as Dreven spoke, envoys from the outer systems began to withdraw their trust. Old rivalries flared. Small alliances collapsed. The web of mutual aid, carefully woven by Terran diplomats over generations, began to unravel. On a remote world called Helion, a group of refugees once resettled by human volunteers found their settlement under threat by a mining syndicate. Their desperate message for help went unanswered. The only voice ever known to speak up for them was gone. In the following months, rumors began to spread. Ships went missing along the trade routes, once patrolled by Terran vessels. Medical technology, gifted by Earth, started to fail subtle glitches, encrypted failsafes that no alien technician could fix. Human-built AI, now left to run hospitals and logistics, became erratic. Their programming locked Terran voice commands and override codes that no one else possessed. Some in the council began to regret their victory. But pride and politics made it impossible to admit the truth. In the old Terran embassy on the council's homeworld, dust settled on empty desks. A small hologram played in a dark corner, a memory of Earth's blue sky and a young child's laughter, set to loop forever. But the chamber, for the first time in centuries, was silent. The silence of humanity's departure echoed through every corridor of power. At first, the dominant empires celebrated their new freedom. With the Terrans gone, trade agreements were renegotiated for profit, not fairness. Border disputes resolved with brute force, not mediation. Human ideals, compassion, creative problem-solving, a stubborn belief in the rights of the smallest colony were dismissed as naive and inefficient. But soon, The cracks grew wider. On the mining world of Dravax, a reactor meltdown threatened planetary extinction. In years past, human crisis teams would have responded within hours, deploying experts who'd saved the world 3 times before. This time, Dravax's calls for help disappeared into the Council's bureaucracy. By the time a rescue team arrived, the reactor's core was lost, and 1 million lives with it. News of the disaster sent shockwaves across the outer systems. Human-built emergency networks, once the envy of the galaxy, now refused non-Terran access. Codes. Some accused Earth of sabotage, but no one could prove intent. The more cynical whispered that the Council's own tech divisions had deliberately failed to maintain them. Who needs humans now? On the Council floor, Ambassador Lyris called for investigation, but Trevin and his bloc insisted it was just growing pains. When Lyris suggested contacting Earth, the chamber erupted with indignation. The humans walked away, Trevin said, his voice cold. They chose to abandon the galaxy. They made themselves irrelevant. But behind closed doors, the panic was real. Council staffers spent endless shifts attempting to decipher human code, reverse engineer Terran biotech, and replicate Earth's diplomatic playbook. Their results were UNDERWHELMING. At the heart of the confusion was a single, unspoken truth. No one could do what humans had done, not in the same way. Their unpredictability, their empathy, their knack for seeing solutions in chaos. It was missing, and with it, something vital to the galaxy's balance. On the border world of New Santiago, an old Terran medbot was found, powered down in a field. When local doctors reactivated it, it asked, "Are you authorized Terran personnel?" No one could answer. The medbot powered itself off, and the patient died. Small tragedies, multiplying across 1,000 worlds. In the weeks that followed, the Council's approval ratings collapsed. Protests broke out on worlds that had once been stable. In hushed meetings, junior ambassadors whispered, "Did we make a mistake?" But no one dared say it aloud. Not yet. The 3rd month brought the first rebellion. On the moon city of Cyril, miners and engineers, many trained by Earth's finest, rose against their corporate overseers. Their tools, their communication, systems, even their hydroponics, all Terran designed, all suddenly malfunctioning under new management. When the overseers tried to force a reset, the city's power grid collapsed. Across the city, graffiti appeared. "Where is Earth now?" And Terrans never abandoned us, we abandoned them. Cyril's revolution spread to neighboring colonies. Old Terran networks flickered to life, encrypted channels carrying news of the uprising. Council envoys were powerless. Without Terran mediators, they couldn't even speak the language of the miners' code. In the capital, Chancellor Drevin grew furious. "This is sedition." The Terrans seeded rebellion before they left. He thundered, but even his closest allies seemed uncertain. Ambassador Lyris, now leading a small but growing bloc for reform, made a risky journey to the ruins of the old Earth embassy. She found nothing but silence, no sign of sabotage, no secret rebels. Only a single terminal still worked, looping a farewell message from Elena Wu. "If you ever need us, you know how to find us. Just remember what made us stay in the first place." Lyris took those words back to the Council and called for an official delegation to Earth. She was voted down, but the idea was seeded. Meanwhile, on the world of Vestal, Terran-built environmental controls failed during a sandstorm. When the system was rebooted, it played an old Earth lullaby, one remembered by every child who had ever known Terran aid. The storm passed, but the longing remained. All over the galaxy, people began to remember what had been lost. Not just technology or trade, but something deeper. A feeling of hope, of being seen, of knowing someone would always stand up for the powerless. For the first time, whispers of regret grew loud. The council could no longer hide the truth. Reports flooded in. Famine on Antries, piracy along the old Terran patrol routes, plague on Ayla, civil war on 3 rim worlds. Human-built infrastructure, so resilient under their watch, failed again and again for those who didn't understand it. But worse than any single crisis was the unraveling of trust. On council screens, images of old Earth volunteers saving lives, replayed in desperate broadcasts. Petitions for Terran aid reached millions of signatures. Even the empires who'd once argued for Earth's removal now sent secret envoys, hoping for help or at least an explanation in the darkness of her private quarters. Ambassador Lyris stared at an old photo, herself younger, laughing beside Elena Wu at a council banquet. She remembered the stubborn Terran's words. If you're not willing to challenge power, what good is being at the table? With trembling hands, Lyris drafted a message not to Earth, but to the council. We are wrong. We thought we won a victory. Instead, we have lost the heart of this galaxy. It was leaked, translated, and sent to every major world. The reaction was electric. On the council floor, Drevin tried to contain the storm. But for every speech he made, 1,000 voices cried out for the Terran's return. Protests erupted on core worlds. Minor powers formed new alliances, invoking Earth's old trees. On the border, a rogue fleet flew the old Terran banner, promising aid to any world in need, alien or not. The council faced its first true crisis. And all the while, the empty Terran seat remained. An accusation in the heart of power and desperation. The council finally voted, send an envoy to Earth. A small delegation, led by Lyris herself, departed the council homeworld in secrecy. Their ship crossed empty space, no patrols, no aid stations. Every beacon along the route blinked dark, a quiet reminder of who once kept these roads safe. Earth's solar system was transformed. Defensive grids shimmered, but no weapons locked onto the approaching ship. Instead, they were guided to a quiet landing site on Luna. On the moon, the delegation found Terran representatives waiting. Elena Wu stood among them, older but unchanged. In spirit, you finally came, she said quietly. Lyris, fighting back tears, bowed her head. We need your help. The galaxy needs you. We didn't understand what we had until we lost it. Wu regarded her with a bittersweet smile. You thought victory meant freedom from us. You thought you could control everything on your terms. But you forgot why we fought for the galaxy in the first place. It was never about power. It was about purpose. The council delegates begged for aid, for Terran networks to be reactivated, for Earth's return to the table. But Wu was firm. If you want us back, you must rebuild what you broke. Trust, compassion, cooperation. Only then can we stand with you again. The delegation left Luna changed, their pride broken, but their hope rekindled. The journey home was one of reflection. Lyris and her team returned to a galaxy in turmoil, but now with a mission. Back on the council floor, she gave the speech that would become legend. Victory is not dominance. True victory is knowing what you owe to those who stood by you, and finding the humility to ask them back. We lost something essential when we let humanity go. Now, if we want the galaxy to heal, we must earn their trust again. Her words inspired others. World by world, the council voted to restore the old Terran codes, reopen embassies, and honor the alliances once forged in Earth's name. The process was slow, sometimes painful, but each act was a step toward redemption. On the edge of the rim, a Terran ship appeared in the skies of Helion, bringing doctors, engineers, and old friends. On Viren, Terran peacekeepers returned not as conquerors, but as partners. Bit by bit, the heart of the galaxy began to beat again. Years later, The Galactic Council gathered once more. This time, the chamber was alive with debate, laughter, and even the occasional argument. In the center, the Terran seat was no longer empty. Elena Wu stood to speak, flanked by old friends and former rivals. We have all lost something. But from loss, we learned what really matters. Not control, not pride, but connection. That is why we are here. That is why we build. And that is why, no matter how many times we are divided, we will always find our way back. The chamber rose. In applause, not just for the Terrans, but for what they had taught the galaxy. That true victory is not in pushing others away, but in realizing what is lost when you do. And somewhere in the galaxy, a child watched the Council's broadcast, hope shining in their eyes, knowing that this time, no one would be left behind.